All right. Welcome back, folks, to the FF Face-Off, part of the Face-Off Sports Network. We are coming at you today. We're getting ready. Drafts are going down. Season's almost here. We're going to be giving you our fantasy football sleepers and busts. And by the way, I will just say we have a big action-packed week for you. On Wednesday's show, we're going to be doing our fantasy football league winners. That's where we're going to do our flag plants. We're going to pick who we think is going to be the guy to put you over the top in your fantasy football drafts. And then we are shifting our ever popular ADP risers and movers. That'll be on Friday's show. But yeah, we'll be here. And the best way you guys can stay tuned to all that is go on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that stuff. Hit the bell icon to be notified every single time that we go live. Last but not least, visit fffaceoff.com for all of your fantasy football, NFL, sports betting needs, including soccer, by the way. We got a good little soccer podcast we broadcast on here, so check that out as well. My name is Michael Hopp. You can follow me on X at the FF Realist. I'm joined by Mr. Steve D'Angelo, who's going to have a good time here. Then he's going to say, leave the gun, take the cannolis. You can follow him at Fantasy Savvy. Steve, how's about you?
Going well. Another Monday in the fantasy world. Got to wake my ass up a little bit here.
Yeah.
Very busy week and got a lot more drafts to do, and best ball drafts and home league drafts are coming up soon. And yeah, so this is a very important week. We have basically 2 weeks left, so we got to get all our final decisions made, and that starts today.
Yeah. It's beginning to look a lot like fantasy football Christmas, and I can't wait. Also joining us, Mr. Suds and Duds himself. He even changed into a tank top, which we say passes the bar here at the show in terms of your wardrobe. His name is Pete Nova. He can be followed at Supernova38. That's with 2 R's. Pete, how's about you, buddy? How you doing?
I am doing all right. I'm a little sad because, Tim Patrick and Samaje Perine are no longer Denver Broncos, but I'm feeling good today. I got my wine, a little Riesling on the side, so I'm feeling good.
Oh,
yeah, switched it up today.
Summer. You're doing wine. I got a little JD today. So, and last but not least, the godfather of the program. He's not wearing a tank top, but maybe he'll put one on now that Pete put one on. Maybe he'll catch the fever. He should be celebrating a little bit because a certain Dallas Cowboy signed a big contract today. His name is Anthony Servino, and he can be followed the real NFL guru. Anthony Darling, how's about you?
I'm doing pretty good today. Feeling good. Excited to kick off what we call predictions week on the show today. Biggest sleepers and busts. Programming change Wednesday because Pete is out on Friday. We'll be doing our league winner flag plant show. Thursday, NFL futures, betting, and predictions. And Friday, our final ADP movers of the offseason as we head into the final draft weekend of the offseason.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting time. It's just the whole week is just full of drafts and stuff. And it's busy, but you know what? It's beautiful because it means football's back. But all right, so we are going to get into our sleepers and our busts shortly. I am just going to kick this to Anthony. Just, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, even though we have some content out there, if you look into our archives on YouTube, Anthony did put some stuff together on CeeDee Lamb prior to him signing his contract. But CeeDee Lamb and the Dallas Cowboys agreed to a 4-year, $136 million extension with $100 million guaranteed. Anthony, any thought? I mean, I know we both thought this would get done eventually. I'm going to go ahead and move him back up to my wide receiver 1, Tyreek Hill, my wide receiver 2. But Anthony, do you have anything on this?
I was getting a little bit worried as we were getting closer and closer, and there was no word on CeeDee Lamb coming back. And we heard, Jerry being Jerry saying stupid things like, we're not going to miss CeeDee Lamb. And then it was about last week, a longtime Cowboys beat writer, Dave Hellman, I always mess up the name, was on the FS1 programming, and he basically said, hey, this is what Jerry's going to do. I don't agree with it, but I almost guarantee, once this team is preparing to play the Cleveland Browns, and I'm paraphrasing, and CeeDee Lamb is not in that wide receiver room, they're going to get a deal done. And what it took, and where my confidence really shot up, is when we heard that Jamar Chase yesterday returned to practice and on the field, because whatever leverage, it's not like these big time receivers, like they weren't in a pack or anything. But once one domino fell, I figured CeeDee Lamb was going to get done. I didn't think it was going to be done this soon. Like I thought we'd have to wait a few more days. I'm not going to lie, but this was always the outcome. And obviously the next domino to fall is Dak Prescott. But, you said it right. You got to move CeeDee Lamb back up. I think the only justifiable wide receiver to put ahead of CeeDee Lamb, maybe Tyreek Hill.
Sure.
Can you make a case for Jamar Chase to finish as the wide receiver one? But like for me, CeeDee Lamb is my wide receiver one. And there is a world where you can take him as a number one player off the board.
Yeah, that'll move before I go to sleep tonight. He'll be my wide receiver one as per Fantasy Pros. And we also have our rankings on fffaceoff.com. So there you go. All right. We're going to get into our bus now. Also, of course, actually, if I failed to mention this, if you guys have any questions, my dog is barking.
We do. Yeah, we do have a few. If you want to, do you want to answer them before we jump in, or
we can? But one PSA I also wanted to give the people that we started doing recently is, once this video is over, if you see a video like this, and if it's no longer live, you have a question based on something we said, or if it's completely random, ask it in the comments. One of us four will get to it. We guarantee it. But yeah, Pete, if we have any questions, we can answer those, and then we can get into our sleepers and busts.
Yeah. So either one of you guys can answer this one, and when we can, it shouldn't be super long, but Big Draft Energy said, question for the wonderful panel. When you hear the term draft equity, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Steve, we'll go to you.
Yeah. One of you guys.
You hear draft equity. What do you think?
Draft equity? I guess it's this. I feel like I'm the dude in Billy Madison right now trying to answer this question. I have no fucking clue. Draft equity. Yeah, I guess it's just the value on how you perceive a player. And I guess, I feel like you're in the third round.
Yeah.
And this guy is very, very valuable to you. And you think he's a big time value. Like, you thought he should have gone to the second or first round. Then his equity is obviously higher at that point. I guess that's what it means to me.
Sounds about right to me. You did just fine there. Don't sell yourself short now. Come on.
It was just funny. I was just like, it just reminded me of that fucking scene in Billy Madison.
Yeah. To me, I mean, Steve basically paraphrased it. To me, it's a player's value and where you're drafting him at.
Sure. What your perception is of that market.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'd say the same thing. So that's the first. The other one's not really a question. Josh just gave a comment, said Lamb fell to him at the 1.7 in his home league last night.
Right.
Well done. Well done, Josh.
Same league for 22 years, 2000 at first place. They were all scared about Lamb's contract. I wasn't. I actually got Lamb in an auction. He was the first player nominated in this past weekend, and I got him cheaper than Chase, Hill, AJ Brown, and St. Brown. So, yeah, pretty happy about that too. And then he's just talking about, Xavier Worthy. Take care, fellas. Thanks for jumping in, Josh. We appreciate it. Zach Linton is here. Greg is here as well. And that's really it. If you guys have any questions, let us know. We got people here on Facebook, YouTube, just feel free and we'll try to get to it as we go on with the show.
So, all right. So, and by the way, Big Draft Energy is saying he's sleep deprived. He did a bit of a kind of like a pot-a-thon marathon, right, Pete? You were on there as a guest.
I did. It was great. He hit his goal. I think it was 2,400 in Canadian dollars, which equates to like, man. Yeah, I think that equates to like 2,500 in US dollars or something there. So yeah, it was a good time. Yeah,
good. Congratulations, Big Draft Energy.
Yep.
And we will definitely connect for some content during the season for sure. All right,
we got one.
Oh, we have one more.
We'll just grab it. Vic Sabilla, Slick.
Hey,
Vic
there. What's going on?
said, speaking of the 7th pick, 107, do you guys like Hall, JJ, or Brown there? The 2nd round looks better with running back. Should I skip the stud RB in the 1st? I think it's Hall for me. I actually consider I have the 4th pick, and I think I would take Hall at the 104 if he makes it to me.
Yeah, that's great if he could fall to 7. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If it's not him, then I think I go AJ Brown, just for because we all think that he should go before that. But yeah,
in that draft range, there's going to be one of those 2 big running backs outside of CMC. Bijan, CMC, or Bijan or Brees or AJ Brown. You should be able to get one of those players. I am not touching Justin Jefferson. That is he is a full fade for me.
If he for whatever reason is there at like the 111, I would
maybe there, but like inside that top.
That doesn't happen a lot though.
After Garrett Wilson, I would say after Garrett Wilson, if it's Jonathan Taylor and Jefferson, I'll take a chance on Jefferson.
Yeah,
I think that's probably where I'd be comfortable with that.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
With that said, and Vic, you're welcome. Come back to this chat any other time throughout the season. We got you covered all year long. All right, let's give the folks the bad news. Let's go with the busts first. Then we'll end on a happy note. We'll go with the sleepers. Steve, you're up first. Your fantasy football bust is who?
It's DeAndre Swift. And this is the guy that I've sort of liked a lot since he came out as a rookie. I remember drafting him all the way from his rookie season back in 2020. And you remember, like, he started real slow that year and he dropped that winning touchdown for the Lions. But then he started to really go off after that and looked pretty damn explosive, running the ball, receiving the ball. But then the Lions ship him off to Philly. Swift struggles with injury his first 3 years, misses 3 games in 2020 or 3 or 4 in 2021, another 3 games in 2022. So durability was definitely a question with him. A lot of injuries. So the Lions move off of him, which I questioned at the time. I'm like, you're moving off a pretty good back here. You're bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs. You're taking, where do they take Gibbs? 8th or 6th or 7th overall, or 9th overall, something like that. Early in the first round, I was like, wow. I mean, that's pretty crazy. But then as I watched the 2 players last year, I kind of understand what the Lions are doing. Jahmyr Gibbs is just pound for pound a better runner, especially in between the tackles. And he's, a better receiver, in my opinion, in some ways too. So I think the Lions made the right choice there. Now he's on his 3rd team. He's now with the Chicago Bears. So he went from the Lions, went to the Eagles. The Eagles only kept him 1 year. They bring in Saquon. Now, obviously Saquon's an upgrade, but they moved on from him pretty fast as well. So, he stayed healthy last year, 16 games. He had 1,000 yards. His yards per carry was 4.6. Touchdowns were down just 5 total, or 6 total, 1 catch, 5 rushing, 1 catching. But now he goes to the Bears, and obviously it's got to be a downgrade in the situation. The offensive line's not going to be as good, although the Bears' run blocking is more of a run blocking line than a pass blocking line. But 7th round, I'm not clicking on him there. I mean, I'm usually getting my 2nd running back by the 6th round. So I'm getting Ramondre Stevenson. I'm getting Aaron Jones. I'm getting Jimmy Connor, even maybe a little Montgomery. Mostert, I'd rather have in the 7th. Najee, possibly even Javante. So
I love that you called him Jimmy Connor, but go on.
Not the tennis player.
I know.
But yeah, so, there's other guys around him. And then also you have Khalil Herbert, who you can get 7 rounds later, who has, he's a quality back. So I don't think this Swift's going to get a ton of usage.
Some people like him more than Swift too.
Yeah, some like him more than Swift. He's talented. He could take the job. There's still Roschon Johnson. Now Roschon Johnson really hasn't looked good since he's been, since he's gotten his chances. But he's not going to get a lot of usage. He has the injury concerns. I don't really like to use him as my RB2. And also, too, like they were even experimenting with Velus Jones out of the backfield a little bit. We saw what Cordell Patterson did, also out of Tennessee. Cordell and Velus, more of like runners, returners than true receivers. So that's possible. That's something that could be utilized. I still have questions about Caleb, new offensive coordinator, injury concerns. So I don't feel secure taking DeAndre Swift in that 7th round.
Did anybody have any follow-up info they wanted to give on that? I mean, Steve seemed like he pretty much covered it. No,
No, I like it. The only thing I'd ask
Yeah.
is, can we give maybe it'd be good to give like a player in that range that we prefer to click on. I think Steve kind of touched on it a little bit of like, I guess the Javantes and some of those, but maybe we could give a little bit of a flip there too.
I would even like, and I'll just say this, and I think most of you will scoff at this. I don't know if Steve will, but I know Pete and Anthony probably will. I don't mind waiting a little bit longer for Devin Singletary. I think he's gonna get a workload there. He's not gonna be on the cover of Madden next year.
I get
but I think the workload is there. And
it's in the range of outcomes that they finished with the same.
And yes, there's rookies there. Sure. And can those rookies take a hold of the backfield? Sure, they could, but Devin Singletary is also a Brian Daboll guy, and I know it's boring to people, but I think that might just work.
Yeah, I'm with Steve on the fate of DeAndre Swift at cost. Is there and this goes for Swift or any other player, is there a point to where they fall to where, okay, he's the best of this group of players and you draft him? Yes, every player has a price, but if we're talking about DeAndre Swift ADP, there are two running backs that I would take over DeAndre Swift almost every single time. One is Zamir White, the run-heavy scheme in Las Vegas, the projected volume that he's going to get. And then the other one is Raheem Mostert, who is, again, he's not going to probably not scoring 20 touchdowns again, but compared to where we're drafting him, Raheem Mostert, he was prioritized. They brought him back despite drafting right, despite having DeVon Achane. He's going to be, as long as he's healthy, Raheem Mostert's going to be a part of this rushing attack in Miami. We know what that scheme can do on the ground. So I like both of those players over DeAndre Swift.
I think Khalil Herbert too. Like I think he's super underrated. I think he has a chance to be the best running back in that room too.
Yep.
For what it's worth. I think he's the more all-around back out of all three guys.
Now, do we have any questions before we go on to the next player, Pete?
We do. Alex, this one's quick. He just said Barkley on the Eagles. What are your thoughts? I had Barkley as my RB4. I've actually flipped him and Jonathan Taylor, which I think Steve had Taylor at 4 initially in our rankings a couple weeks back. I've pushed Saquon back just one spot, but I think he's going to be really good for fantasy this year.
Yep. Perfect.
Next one, Ethan said, should I trade Puka for Kittle and Aaron Jones? I'm not deep at running back. My RBs are Swift, ETN. My receivers are Puka, Myers, Diggs, and Hopkins. I would hang on to Puka.
Receiver either. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd hang on to Puka.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the deal on the surface, but when you talk about what you have at wide receiver, I actually think you can't afford to lose Puka.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree there.
His running backs aren't even, I mean, ETN is your RB1. Like, I'm not in love with it, but I really don't think that's a bad RB1. And for as much as we don't really love Swift, I don't love him as your RB2. But if you have some of these upside rookies, like, I don't mind having him as RB2, and then maybe down the road later in the season, you can flip him with one of these rookies.
Plus you got Myers, I like Myers, but he's kind of buried there with Myers too, Hopkins got the knee injury. So I think you got to keep Puka.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got a good replacement tight end though, if you ship away Kittle.
All right, let's get to our next player on this list. We're going to Anthony on the bus. Anthony, tell us who your bust is and why. And I don't know why that's moving the way it's moving, but it's moving that way on the graphic if you're watching the YouTube.
That's what she said.
So we're going to talk about Davante Adams. And Davante Adams in full fade mode for me. Now, if we look at the body of work for Davante Adams, he's a borderline Hall of Fame player, right? If starting from 2016 to 2022, he has never finished outside of the top 12 in points per game, and for a lot of those seasons, inside the top 2 in points per game. Last year, Davante Adams, 31 years old, he's entering his age 32 season now. Can you make a case that there's a little bit of a decline at his age? Also, we know the quarterback play was bad, but, Adams, the wide receiver 10 overall, which is nice. But in a points per game standpoint, the wide receiver 15. This is a player who had the second most targets in the NFL, 175. When, look what CeeDee Lamb is putting up with that type of volume. I get it. There's a quarterback downgrade, but that quarterback downgrade is also why I am pretty much out on Davante Adams this year. We're still paying a fair premium for Davante Adams. He is going as the wide receiver 11 off the board using August FFPC Fantasy Pros ADP. I get it if you want to chase those targets, but is there even a guarantee he's still going to see that type of volume? Like, they have some pretty good pass catchers, Jacoby Myers, two capable pass catching tight ends in Meyer and Brock Bowers. This is going to be a run heavy system. The quarterback room isn't good. So let's focus on this quarterback room first and foremost. And we know what he has to work with. They're going with Gardner Minshew first, and the fallback is Aiden O'Connell. In the games that Aiden O'Connell and Davante Adams played together last year, Davante Adams averaged under 10 PPR points a game. Is that what you really want from the 11th receiver off the board and that premium? Absolutely not. And I think you're fooling yourself if you think Gardner Minshew is that much of an upgrade over Aiden O'Connell. He's fun. He gets a lot of the social media hype. He's coming off of a solid year in a really good system with Steichen, who's one of the best quarterback guys, best OCs in the NFL, who's now a head coach. He's losing that stability with Steichen. And the stat is both Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew last year, their rough average under 200 passing yards per game, both horrific, right? Bottom 12 when it comes to catchable target rate. And again, this is going to be a year where he might be competing with targets more. I can't stomach drafting Davante Adams at cost. And like I said earlier with Swift, is there a point in the draft where I'm comfortable taking Davante Adams? Yeah, there is going to be a point. But I don't know where that point is because there's a lot of good wide receivers. There's a lot of good wide receiver depth this year. Now, I want to circle back to the possible decline for Davante Adams because Davante Adams supporters, they're going to say, well, he was on a decline last year, not really because of age, but because of the quarterback play. But last season, he was 30th in yards per route run amongst wide receivers. In 2022, he was number 8. He was also 25th in yards after the catch amongst wide receivers, where in 2022, he was number 6. I think those have a little bit more to do with Davante than the quarterback. So there's just a lot of red flags for me with Davante Adams. And I'll let you know some of the players that he's going around behind him, Chris Olave. And I don't love that quarterback situation either, but I do think that with Kubiak as the OC, they're going to throw a little bit more. Plus, there's no Michael Thomas there, who did play, I believe, 10 games last year. Cooper Kupp, who's flying off draft boards. Debo, Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans. All of those players I'm probably taking over Davante Adams. And quite frankly, I think we go a little bit further down. I'm taking DJ Moore and Rashee Rice over Davante Adams.
Yeah, that all sounds about right to me. I mean, I don't have much argument. I mean, I have some shares of Davante Adams. Usually it's in best ball because I don't want to deal with the headache that we think we're going to get, which you were kind of talking about there. So yeah, I'm on board. I mean, Steve, do you have anything on this with Davante Adams, or are you pretty much
I'm not drafting as much Adams as I did last year. I do think Minshew's a slight upgrade over O'Connell, and Jimmy G last year was a hot mess too. Adams saying I'm going to get killed out here. But Adams, he's such a technician. He doesn't rely on speed as much. He doesn't have to rely on his speed as much. He's going to set guys up. He's still going to be a huge part of the offense. So yeah, I understand it. But that whole second round is there's a lot of question marks at receiver. With Olave, with Derek Carr, with Cooper Kupp and his age issues, with Waddle playing second fiddle to Tyreek. Some of those third round receivers I do kind of like better. That second round is just at ADP is just a little weird. So, I kind of like, grabbing some of those running backs in the second round, like Gibbs or ETN, Achane, any one of those guys, Barkley. So yeah, that's why I haven't been taking a lot of Adams. But if you do click on him, I mean, I don't know if he's going to bust per se. He probably won't pay off that second round value, but he's still going to be really, really solid and give you a pretty nice season regardless. It's just that you're probably not looking at a lot of upside, and those days of Davante Adams absolutely crushing it are over now as he goes 31-32 and playing with Gardner Minshew, and they bring in Bowers this year. The one saving grace could be if he somehow ends up with Aaron Rodgers or maybe another contending team with a much better quarterback.
Yeah, that was what Brandon just commented on YouTube there. We appreciate the comment, Brandon. He said an argument could be made for Davante if it's possible, if he's traded to a much better situation, if the Raiders are that bad, would increase his value in the second half of the season. So that is a thing which Steve basically just said there right there. So good thinking, Brandon.
Before we move off, Steve, you brought up a good point, and for anybody listening, there's going to be a lot of drafts in the next 2 weeks leading up to Thursday Night Football. You brought up some draft strategy where you said you like the running backs better in round 2. And I think we both like a lot of these round 3 wide receivers better. This is, and I think I brought this up to Hoff or Pete on another show. Like, I think you have all the running backs don't matter and zero running back. Like, I think we are getting back to a point in fantasy football, and it's becoming evident this season where we're starting to see some notable guys out there who longtime fantasy football experts, if you will, say, hey, like, you want to leave one of the first 2 rounds or both rounds with a running back this season because there's a significant cliff after the first 2 rounds of running backs, and the wide receiver pool is so deep to where you can wind up with a Bijan, a Pacheco, or Bijan and Achane, and then in round 3 walk away with a possible DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Nico Collins is your wide receiver 1.
Yeah, you could take 2 running backs the first 2 rounds and still end up with a pretty good wide receiver room. I kind of like some of my drafts. I kind of like going 3 running backs, 4 receivers within the first 2 rounds, like a 3-4 in the first 7 rounds. And I kind of like the builds. They come out pretty clean. They come out balanced, and then you could get a quarterback later. We know there's tons of talent at quarterback, and even a tight end. You can end up with a Jake Ferguson. You can end up with a David Njoku, who I like. So yeah, I mean, those are builds you can do. So I mean, yeah, I think people are getting a little too giddy now. Receiver, like you see some of these people take 5-6 straight receivers. I mean, that still works too, and you're getting a powerhouse team, obviously. Right. But when it comes to the point you can only start 3 or 4 receivers, then what are you doing? You got to try to get your starting lineup pretty strong too. So everything pops, everything works, but I think you could do it both ways this year.
So before we go to Pete with his bust, I will just say, I will say one thing. I will say, actually, I see you guys are watching on YouTube, and I appreciate that immensely. If you're watching, please feel free to hit that like button. It's going to help us out immensely on this program. You guys have been a big part of why this show has been surging over the last few months, and it's not lost on us. We appreciate the hell out of you guys. Pete, with that said, did we have any questions, or did you want to get into your bust, or what says you?
Yeah. So we got a lot of questions. So let's try to get through these as quickly as we can. Alex Lenars on Facebook asked something similar to what Lewis asked. So I'll try to rope them in together, both questions. Alex says, one more question. Hopefully he's still here. I know he asked a question earlier on and we got to it. He said, one more question. Do you think rostering Kupp and Williams as a combination is a successful strategy? I think it has a lot of boom potential, but it also comes with a lot of risk, in my opinion. I happen to like Kyron, but you're hitching your wagon to Kupp, who I like Kupp as well, but I do prefer in redraft a little more diversity than that. And those 2 guys in the top 3 rounds, you're most likely drafting both.
And those are both guys that can get hurt too. I mean, Kyron too.
And they're on the same team. I don't really love rostering the same running back and their same receiver on the same team, especially not in best ball. So
I don't mind doing that.
I'd rather doing it in best ball over anything else.
That's what I meant to say. I meant to say in best ball, not redraft.
Gotcha.
So, all right. So let's try to rip through the rest here because we have a couple more. Big Draft Energy says Zay Flowers at his ADP draft or let the next idiot get him. Yeah, I mean, Zay Flowers is a full fade for me. Full fade. I am not drafting Zay Flowers.
Fade.
I don't know.
No, I prefer Malik Neighbors. I prefer Tank Dell.
Yeah,
I
but
prefer
Neighbors goes
Higgins.
earlier.
Wait a minute.
Earlier.
Yeah,
Neighbor-
Neighbors is
okay.
going earlier. Let's get a price
So,
check on this.
so the price check, Malik Neighbors is the 411 and
Yeah.
Zay Flowers is the 508 on 4 for 4. You're talking about 7 picks apart from each other.
Neighbors
So-
usually, I mean, it depends.
Well, that's not even
Home
yeah.
leagues. He may go like 4th, but I mean, I see him going the 2nd, 3rd a lot. You know.
Yeah, I
so.
mean that's not even a conversation for me.
I mean, this is the ADP of Underdog, CBS, ESPN, FFPC, NFL, and Yahoo tied together on 4 for 4.
So around there, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, so I prefer all of those guys. Tank Dell is the wide receiver 26. Zay Flowers is wide receiver 27. I'd rather take Tank Dell. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more in that offense. I think there is a way more chemistry between Dell and Stroud. And for what it's worth, like this offense told us last year in Baltimore that they were going to throw the football more. Zay Flowers, granted, he was a rookie, but like it wasn't like he was amazing. I mean, he had a decent down the stretch, but Lamar has never really paid off when it comes to a receiver outside of the tight end position, paying off for fantasy. I think they added Derrick Henry. They have Patrick Ricard. They have Likely, and they have Mark Andrews. I think we're going to see a lot of like 22 personnel where they're running 2 tight ends with Henry and Ricard, and Zay Flowers may be the guy split out wide. But I don't know, like everyone was excited that Greg Roman was leaving and it didn't really, like Bateman has had his injury issues and stuff. And granted, Lamar hasn't really had a great cast around him, but there's only one wide receiver I want in this room and it's Mark Andrews, and I'll continue to pound that table. And I'd rather wide receivers and offenses with better quarterbacks. And that's not to say Lamar is not a good quarterback, but when it comes to actually throwing the football, like game script wise, passing, I think those teams are going to throw the football a lot more, like T. Higgins, like Rashee Rice, who goes behind Zay Flowers, like Tank Dell, like Malik Neighbors, who they're going to be down a lot this season. You think they're going to play from behind? He's going to get a lot more volume. So that would be
one of the most targeted wide receivers in football this year.
And we've been very adamant on this show that we don't love Neighbors. Depending on if he falls, but I didn't like Neighbors at his cost. Like Steve said, if he's going 3rd round or at the end of somewhere in that mix, I don't love him. But so I don't know if anybody else has anything. We still have a lot more questions, but if does anybody else have anything on Flowers?
Nope.
No, I'm with you.
I'll just say, like the receivers that are around him, like Cooper, Diggs, even Higgins, the quarterbacks are going Mahomes, Allen there, Jacobs, Rashad White, James Cook, Mixon. So if you start your team with 2 running backs and you want to make Flowers your second receiver, I think that's fine. He's a route runner. This guy loves to learn the craft, and he's their best receiver. So Lamar does have to learn to throw on the boundaries a little bit more, but Zay Flowers does play in the slot. He will be used on reverses, screens, and he is an explosive player. And it was a pretty good rookie season, and he finished strong down the stretch. So I think he's really, really talented. So I don't mind clicking on him as my second receiver.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say, I know you're higher, Steve, than us on Flowers. With Andrews being injured towards the end of the year, I just worry.
Yeah, no, that helps.
That comes back
for sure.
Yeah, but we'll see. I think he's a great player. I just think it's not a great situation. All right, Luis Roma, who has been a staple of the Facebook community, comes in here and says, how do you guys feel about reaching for ETN over Kyron? I'm worried about Kyron's availability through the season. I'll let one of you guys take this one.
I think it's legitimate to worry about Kyron Williams and the injury history. I mean, I would say I love Kyron in best ball, and I think we keep circling back to that a bunch when there's players that we are not comfortable with in redraft, but you don't deal with the headache as much if it's in a best ball format because you're getting them on their pop weeks. I think in a redraft, I think I'd probably go ETN. It's close. It's very close. I mean, if Kyron stays healthy, ETN, in my opinion, is getting blown out of the water in terms of production. But it's also a bullet to bite when you're drafting that high because those guys are going up there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I'm taking Kyron, I think I'm going to take Corum almost every single time if I can get him.
Absolutely.
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, Kyron, he has a much better backup behind him in Blake Corum. So, and he does have injury concerns. And McVay has been very wishy-washy with his running backs the past couple seasons. Last year, Cam Akers was going to be the guy going in the year, and then he freaking got thrown into a dumpster. Darrell Henderson got thrown into a dumpster. So he's done that. Kyron definitely performed well. I just think ETN's a little bit of a safer pick, and Tank Bigsby he's not better than Blake Corum, so there's less of a threat behind him. But yeah, I mean, Kyron, if he gets the same volume as last year, I mean, he was unbelievable, and he won a lot of people fantasy championships. It's just, do you see that this year with Blake Corum? Maybe they want to just conserve him a little bit more.
Yeah, I prefer Kyron only because I think he provides more upside. I'm willing to take the chance if I make it a priority to get Corum, like Steve said. I like ETN, but I just think a lot of his success is predicated on the receiving work. And I do think they added to this room with Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, and they still have Evan Ingram there. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not in love with Tank Bigsby, but again, I know this is like we heard it all off season last year. Maybe it comes to fruition this year. But I don't think ETN gets the workload in the pass game like we've seen. And I think that inflated a lot of his, a lot of his fantasy success. But I do think it's close, and it wouldn't shock me if ETN finishes ahead of Kyron. But I still prefer Kyron for me. I trust McVay. I trust McVay. I just trust McVay more than McDermott than Pearson. Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say ETN only had one receiving touchdown last year, but he did have 11 rushing, so that certainly helped. And
the volume,
his yards per carry was just 3.8. But
he had a lot of catches.
He did get 58 catches. Yeah.
All right, Pete, did you have another question or two you wanted to get to before?
We got a few. Let's just bang them out.
Mark rapid fire.
Mark Prince says, do you guys really think Chubb can come back from his injuries to be a good late pick in the draft?
Yeah, I'll jump in there only because I made a tweet today and I talked a bunch about it. I know that there was a gnarly knee injury. I know he's got a history of knee injuries. But if you can get him now, I saw this range from some people replied to me on X that they got him in the 5th round, which I think is crazy. Some people told me they got him in the 10th, 12th, or later. If you can get him in the 10th, 12th, or later, I don't mind making that investment. I don't mind making that stash, especially if you focus on, Steve alluded to earlier, those guys who draft a bunch of wide receivers right away. If you take that kind of approach, and if you take that lottery ticket in the 10th, 12th, or later round and get yourself a Nick Chubb, I can live with that. I get it. The injury was gross. He's done it before. Frank Gore did it back in college when he was with the Miami Hurricanes. He turned out okay. So I'm willing to take the investment at that price. If he's going in the 5th round, absolutely not.
No, it's too high. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
and he's out the first 4 weeks. So I mean, he's not going to move. He's going to stay in that range.
Yeah,
and I agree. I've been clicking on his name. I'm rooting for him to make a comeback. And he's out the first 4 games, and it probably will be a slow ramp up, but he certainly could be a nice benefit in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on. We just have a few more. I'm going to answer one, and then there's like 2 more that we can hang on to until we go over the next 2 players, and we'll do that. So Jamie Fernandez says, our 8-man team drafted Saturday. 1 keeper, full point PPR. I went heavy on wide receiver, Jefferson, St. Brown, A.J. Brown. Obviously, my teammates went heavy on running back. Again, keep in mind, guys, it's an 8-man league. I'm struggling on my starting running backs for opening week. Need to pick 2: Achane, Kamara, Stevenson, Zamir White, Javonte Williams. I'd have to look and see who they're playing.
It's early for this question.
Yeah, it's a little early, Jamie. Why don't you come back? We're gonna actually do our shows on Sundays, where we'll do all our lineup questions before the Sunday slate, and then we'll be here next week, starting to get ready because we have football next week. So we'll start answering questions.
Our in-season content is when we're live is going to be very much focused on answering questions.
Yeah, starting Wednesday, we pretty much start answering starts
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. All right. So we just have one more since that one was quick. Let me just answer it because it's the last one we have. And Jamie said, appreciate it. Yep. Jamie, we'll see you next week. Hopefully, feel free to hang out, obviously, still, but we'll get you to that answer next week. Ryan Santoro says he's a Breece Hall owner. Would you send a 2026 second for Braylon Allen Dynasty Superflex win now roster? I would. I would.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're in a win now, sure.
Maybe not if it was 2025. I may ask for like a third back, but a second round 2 years from now, you have a lot of time to recoup that back. So
yeah. All right. So our next bust on this list is actually going to Pete. Pete was doing quite a bit of talking. He's going to do some more. I don't know what happened with these graphics where this is happening with the name. I do apologize.
He's in the
but
pits.
you know who it is. It is the pits. It is the
Jesus
pits.
Christ.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah.
Anthony's
So Michael,
upset. Get off my lawn.
Michael Pittman. Wide receiver 19. He got a contract extension. He's coming off one of his best years, if not the best year of his career. You might be sitting there thinking like, why would you fade him after coming off the best season of his career? He's still pretty young. He's wide receiver 19 off the board. He's going on average at the 311 spot in 12-man leagues. Career best, 7.85 targets per game, 6.81 receptions, 72 yards, 10.6 yards per catch. He had a really good year. I think Minshew helped that. Crazy enough, I think Steichen really squeezed as much juice as possible out of it. But he only had 3 top 12 finishes last season, and he was 18th in points per game. So when I look at Pittman, he has a really high floor, but he doesn't really have much boom to him. This is a guy that if you need stability on the roster, he's worth drafting. But at the 311, it's hard to call for stability. I personally like upside in the third round, but it's all going to matter as to where you're drafting. But I just don't think where he's going. I don't want to spend a third round pick on Pittman. Like I said, he had 6 weeks where he didn't finish better than the wide receiver 37 last year, which was pretty shocking to me. You have Josh Downs and Adonai Mitchell, who I think are going to eat into his target share. Downs had 98 targets last season as a rookie. Now he is coming off the ankle sprain. And so we'll see how that goes. But even Alec Pierce, who had a really good camp from all reports and said Adonai Mitchell before Downs went down, Adonai Mitchell was fighting with Pierce for the wide receiver 3 role because Pierce just looked that good. So I worry that, this is a guy in Pittman who relies on a lot of volume to make his hay in fantasy. I worry that if he gets some of that volume chewed into, that he's just not going to produce at where he's going. Some guy and Anthony Richardson, the accuracy issues do worry me a little bit. We just got to see where his arm is when the season goes, and we didn't really get to see a ton, in the preseason outside of that last game that he played. But some guys I prefer that I think have higher upside are DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, and Devonta Smith. All who are in offenses that I believe are going to throw the football more, and they all should see more volume. DJ Moore probably has they all have competition. Don't get me wrong. DJ Moore may have the best competition around him, but I still think the game script will lend them to throwing the football more. And for what it's worth, this isn't a knock on Anthony Richardson, but I do think all 3 of those guys have better quarterbacks when it comes to throwing them the football and the quality of their targets. I think DK, when you talk Geno Smith, when you talk Caleb Williams, and when you talk Jalen Hurts, I think all 3 of those quarterbacks are going to be better at getting those guys the football than Anthony Richardson will be this year, who may look to run a lot. So I am fading Michael Pittman at his cost this year. And I think he's definitely going to bust for sure.
Anthony, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm in on Anthony Richardson, as people who listen to this show know, but I'm not necessarily in on Michael Pittman because I'm buying into what Anthony Richardson can do, with his legs. And as Pete suggested, this is a crowded wide receiver room. Not only do we have Pittman, AD Mitchell starting to look the part. And, you got Josh Downs coming back. And for the first time, this didn't happen last year in the small sample size we saw AR, is that Jonathan Taylor's also going to be on the field. So I think this could be a run-dominant football team. And I think that downgrades Michael Pittman a little bit. Last year, we were drafting Michael Pittman, similar to Mike Evans, where both of them were relative league winners. We were drafting them at like 7th, 8th round. And they were returning, especially Evans, but also Pittman, high quality production in fantasy football. And now I feel like we might be drafting Michael Pittman at his ceiling. I don't know if there's a higher ceiling to be had, especially with all the wide receiver talent in fantasy football that we can get around Michael Pittman. Like guys I mentioned earlier during the Adams take, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, and if you want to go for the ultimate ceiling play around that price point, I think that guy could be George Pickens, to where you could draft another position where you're going to draft Pittman and they get Pickens in the next round.
Yeah, that all sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough for me to click on him. He was cheaper last year. He was a much better value. 3rd round stuff.
Right. I mean, if you're in Greg's league, he said Pittman went in the 8th round in a standard temp team. Sure, yeah, I can stomach that cost for sure. We have one question and then we'll go on here. Jonathan Santiago just wants to know, he says his wide receivers being Adams, Ayuk, and Garrett Wilson, wants to know what your thoughts. I don't know if this is redraft or dynasty, but either way, I mean, it's hard to do much better than that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know Adams is a fade, but he's going to provide a floor, and Wilson provides that upside. And
I was going to say
somewhere in the middle too.
Where Adams is a nice number 3 with those other 2 guys.
Yeah,
where I wouldn't depend on I wouldn't want to depend on Adams as my 1 anymore.
Yeah, yep, I completely agree. All right,
so that comment, London's going 2nd round.
I just think he's saying at his cost, he'd rather pay up for London than take Pittman at the price that he's going. Greg wants to know ham and pineapple on his pizza, please. Anthony Richardson. When Anthony Richardson doesn't get into the top 5.
Oh, all right.
That is some blasphemy on this.
Hey, listen, he's not from America. You got to give him some, give him some.
No, listen. We love Greg. And he knows this is tough love. But no, we do not do pineapple on pizza on this podcast.
No. Well, I've never tried it.
I don't.
That's actually a European thing. When I was in Spain, they were putting things. They were putting the normal thing is tuna on pizza.
Oh my god!
What is that? No,
that's a normal thing. Prosciutto.
Prosciutto's fine, but
I live here in the good old
every
USA.
Fucking pizzeria I saw in Spain, airport, Ibiza, tuna. Even my resort, 5-star resort. Tuna on pizza. I said to the chef, "What is this shit?" He's like, "This is what we like here."
I mean, you were probably okay with it because you're from Jersey and the pizza's not as good there as it is here in New York. But no,
pizza.
Yeah.
Greg said tuna and olive pizza, lovely. All right, I can't. I'm gonna throw up if we keep talking about that.
I would throw that pizza out so fast.
All right, let's get to
Might give you whiplash. All right. Speaking of whiplash, we're going to go to my bust. My fantasy football bust this year is DeVon Achane. I'm saying Achane because people commented in the YouTube chat. When I said Achane, they didn't like it. I'm just trying to please everybody, but I'm not going to please you with telling you that he's a bust. I mean, listen, he's still slated as a mid to late 2nd round, early 3rd round pick. Finished as the RB24 last year, 11 games, going off the board as the 11th running back right now. Now, if you've watched our content before, this is going to sound a little bit like a broken record because I've said these things before, but it's because I believe in them. I don't think at the end of the day, Raheem Mostert completely goes away. And when you talk about the workload that DeVon Achane had last year, 23% of the carries. Again, he only played in 11 games. Mostert played in 15. Now, is that number going to go up a bit? Sure. But is it going to go up to a stratospheric amount? I don't see it. And I know everybody wants to point to the birth certificate of Raheem Mostert and say that's why it's going to go down. Well, he was old last year too, according to a lot of you, but he still scored 21 touchdowns. That's going to go down this year, obviously. We all know touchdown regression is coming for Raheem Mostert. But when you look at running backs that have finished in the top 12 last year, the percentage of carries, I'll just run through it. 55%. This is percentage of running back touches in the run game. So not targets, just run game. 55%, 46%, 59, 58, 67, 48, 62, 63, 41, 37 was the low one. Then we got 46 and 54. DeVon Achane, again, 23% of the rushing attempts. I don't see it. I don't see where he returns the value. Now, listen, is there a world where I can be incredibly wrong on this? 1,000%. There's a lot of very smart analysts who love DeVon Achane. You also, by the way, didn't even mention this. Jalen Wright was drafted this year, and people say that he could hurt Mostert when they wanted to talk about DeVon Achane. Well, why can't Wright hurt Achane? Why can't he eat into both production? Then you talk about the injury history. Mostert and Achane are not exactly sitting there with the cleanest bill of health. There's a reason why DeVon Achane only played in 11 games last year. So we reference this a lot. I love him in best ball. I've got him in a best ball lineup in a slow draft right now on DraftKings, and I couldn't be happier about it because you want to know why? I'm going to buy into those big weeks because he's going to have those big weeks. Somebody mentioned to me on X, like, oh, man, you must have forgot about the 4-touchdown game. No, I didn't. I also didn't forget about the time that he missed a couple of weeks because he was injured. And he was injured early on, training camp, preseason. So I get it. It's dynamic. It's a very shiny toy. It looks very nice. But I personally cannot invest late second round, early third if I can't rely on a player to be there for a majority of the season. That's my big issue here with DeVon Achane. This is why I can't do it. And I mentioned the running back touches, 23% last year. Mostert had 46. How much of a percentage do you all expect Mostert to lose to make DeVon Achane worth that second round pick or that early third round pick? I just don't see it. And listen, maybe he comes close to it. I don't think he's returning that value. And I've said this all off season. I'm going to continue to beat the drum. I know it's not popular. And for those who want to come at me, I don't mind being wrong. I will be there for the slings and arrows in late December while we're all celebrating Christmas or whatever holiday you hold near and dear to your heart. DeVon Achane for me is going to be a bit of a fantasy football bust. Does anybody, because I know this has been a hot topic, does anybody have anything that they would like to add or disagree on or what have you?
The only thing I'm excited to see is if they deploy Achane in the pass game more, which we saw a little bit in preseason, where maybe they could even find ways to have Mostert in the backfield and Achane, split out wide. That I'd be interested to see where they can get both guys, and they might be able to get both guys on the field at the same time. I don't know. I just think Achane for me, we've talked about it, and I think he was really high at round 2 when we started this offseason. Now he's in round 3. Sometimes he gets pushed back to the end of round 3. I don't mind taking a chance on him at that point because of the upside and because of the cost. But I do have buyers beware of him for sure this year.
So I'm going to go on the other side here. DeVon Achane doesn't need volume. I get it. When you're drafting a player in the second round, you want volume, right? You want to depend on that high floor. But Achane, now he played in 11 games. 2 of those games that he played, he had a total of 4 touches. So let's kick them out because obviously the first game, week 2 against New England, he was just getting back. Obviously, week 3 is when he popped. And then there was another week, week 11 against Vegas, where he comes back from that week 5 injury against the Giants and not very much involved. So if you take away those 2 games and the 4 total touches in those 2 games, and you do the math, DeVon Achane averaged 14 touches a game and was the 5th best running back in fantasy points per game. If DeVon Achane can stay healthy and gets a similar workload, we're not asking a lot, roughly 14 touches a game, then I think he absolutely smashes that ADP. But again, can he be a bust? Yes. Can he win the league for you? Absolutely. It's just a matter of, can you handle that variance? Are you prepared to where if he does miss 6 games, are you the type of fantasy player to where you're going to be prepared for that? Or is it going to make you go crazy? If it's going to make you go crazy, don't fucking draft it.
Yeah.
I'll just say that when you hear a lot of these smart minds talk about Achane, they also play in points leagues, total points leagues, a lot of these high stakes. And that's where these guys are taking him for that upside because they play in that tournament mode, weeks 15, 16, 17, where it's all about points. There's no head-to-head. So I certainly see in that case, taking him in the second round. If you're in a home league, you're a couple leagues, it's definitely a lot more risky. Now, he could work out either way. I mean, this guy could still be a smash. But I certainly, I see. I'm going to have a little of them, not a lot of them. I like Mike's points. You got Raheem Mostert. He's still a young, athletic, 32, 33 years old.
Right. The guy's a
freaking surfer. Then you got Jalen Wright, who's talented. So this might be more Achane next year than this year. But I mean, he really could be a league winner. But go ahead.
Now we're gonna get to Steve, but we're gonna go into sleepers finally. But Anthony, you weren't happy about something. What happened?
No, Pete, fucking Dalvin Cook is flying to Dallas.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was waiting for this conversation to end so I could bring it up because we fucking talked about this.
Yeah, buddy.
Doesn't mean I'm gonna happy. I'm not happy. I'm not gonna be happy about it.
Every time Dalvin Cook scores a touchdown on the goal line, I'm gonna fucking
How about the
doesn't score? I'm just gonna rub it right into Anthony's face. Oh God,
there's a reason why Anthony's got a Giants hat
we need to have a pizza bet. We gotta have a pizza.
We do. That Dante Foreman's gonna out fucking produce Dalvin.
Well, no, we didn't have that because I said he hasn't signed anywhere yet.
Right.
How can I possibly make the bet if he's not on a team?
If Dalvin Cook signs with Dallas, I will still make that bet.
Is he going to out-produce or is he going to out-fucking-produce? Which one?
Out-fucking-produce him.
I don't even know if I'd make the bet in Dallas because he's still going to be behind Rico and Zeke.
But
you just said you're going to smash.
Dalvin Foreman has a clear pathway for the first 6 weeks. Nick Chubb isn't. It's a little bit different. Okay. It's a little bit different. Like he's going to sign to a team that has Zeke and Rico. I mean, I'm not making bets just to lose.
You're talking like it's Emmitt Smith and Tony Dorsett. Tito Rico can't
as the unofficial host of the show, I do have to move this on. Yes, Jamie loves it. We love it. We all love it. But we do have to move the show. We're at 58 minutes. We haven't even got to our sleepers yet. All right.
Funny.
Steve, you're up first with our sleepers. You are picking a McCaffrey, but not the McCaffrey going at the top of the draft. How you feeling? What's going on with this pick?
Yeah, this is. I think this could be a nice little sleeper for a couple of reasons. One reason is the path. Olamide, Zacchaeus, Diami Brown, Jamison Crowder, Brian Pringle, Martavis Bryant. I mean, the number 2 there is not far within reach. And why can't Luke McCaffrey, a 3rd round pick, step up and possibly earn that number 2 role there with Washington this year? If the very least, the number 3 role, you have Jaden Daniels, who looks very, very solid, named the starter. I have high hopes for him. We know Kingsbury is going to sling the rock a lot. They're going to, even when Kingsbury comes out, he does like 4 wide receiver sets a lot as well. So I think McCaffrey is going to have a chance here to show what he can do. He started out going to Nebraska as a quarterback, didn't work out. So he transferred to Rice, became a receiver, was their leading receiver last year, almost 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns. You put on the highlight tape, the guy's catching one-handed catches left and right, showing his backyard athleticism, what you would expect, with the pedigree he has with his brother Christian, his dad Ed. But you've probably heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. It's not just on his dad's side. It's on his mom's side as well. His mom was like an all-American soccer player at Stanford, and her father, born in Paterson, New Jersey, grew up in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, won an Olympic medal in 1960 as a runner. So he's got the pedigree. I believe he's talented. He's got a great opportunity in a good situation. So round 16, round 17, maybe last round of your draft, I think he's worth a click. I mean, he could show out a little bit here and be a very, very nice asset for your teams.
Yeah, I'm a little optimistic about McCaffrey. I mean, you're not, unlike his brother, you're not spending a ton of draft capital at all. And yeah, you're right. Based on the depth chart, there is an opportunity to succeed there. Yeah, I like it. I'm in. I mean, I don't have much more to add beyond that.
I mean,
but
hey, it's
especially where you're getting him.
Yeah, it's so late, so it's more of like a deep sleeper. But so even if I'm wrong, I'll take the L a little bit. But even if I'm wrong, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. If you're wrong about that, Steve,
right?
Someone's cutting them in the first few weeks, and they're picking up somebody else. Like they will live to tell the tale.
But with the talent, the pedigree, the opportunity,
and he's versatile, right? Like he can line up in any of those receiver spots.
Yeah,
from my understanding, yeah.
He's he's the guy's an athlete, of course. So I think he can pretty much do anything on the field.
Pete, do you have anything else you want to add, or you busy?
No, I'm good. I was just gonna say, I mean, we're talking like super deep with McCaffrey, so even if Steve's wrong on it, it's not like it's an easy bench drop, and then you're picking somebody else up, kind of thing. It's not like you're married to him. I prefer Diami Brown just because, in my opinion, like when they got rid of Dotson, McCaffrey still wasn't reported as the number 2. So, like to me, I'm like, if you can't beat out Diami Brown, like. But I understand that he's a rookie and, it could take some time. I just think Diami Brown's a little bigger, and I think they may want somebody who can run block. And I don't know if McCaffrey can. I haven't really looked at his tape to know if he's good at that, but I think Cliff might be looking more for somebody. And that's what I read that they said Dotson wasn't good at run blocking. So I think that was part of the concern there. But McCaffrey's got time to develop. I mean, he's a late round dart. And he's got the name pedigree. So, yeah.
All right. So let's continue to go deep in these drafts. All you beat the drum for him, but go ahead. What are your thoughts on Ray Davis?
Yeah, Ray Davis is one of my all-in players, one of my highest rostered players throughout this offseason, and I'm going to keep drafting him as I finish out my drafts in the next few days or a few weeks leading up to the week 1. So Ray Davis, I think at this point, if we looked at how he played this preseason, at least the first 2 games, I think he's pretty much locked up that number 2 running back spot. Now, there were reports from a beat writer saying, hey, it's going to be a 2A, 2B situation with Ty Johnson. I think Ray Davis is ultimately going to emerge, 80 total yards, 15 carries, 33% missed forced tackle rate. 3.5 yards after contact, according to Pro Football Focus, for any running back with 10 or more attempts. We know that Ray Davis, 4th round pedigree coming in, just over 1,450 yards from scrimmage, 21 touchdowns last year in Kentucky. Now, he's 5'8", 211. James Cook, 5'11", 190. So your prototypical in between the tackles runner. He can catch the ball a little bit as well. Now, this running back 2 role in Buffalo, it has standalone value. And I don't think, I know a lot of people, they want it to be James Cook. James Cook isn't it. And Buffalo has been telling us, I say it all the time, teams like the Bills, teams like Tampa Bay, they're literally telling us that they like the running back that they have, but they don't love the running back they have because they keep trying to not replace, but get a complement, give somebody else some of that workload. And with Buffalo, through the years, it's been guys like Damian Harris, Latavius Murray. I think 2 years of Latavius Murray at his age. They even kicked the tires on Leonard Fournette, Ty Johnson. They also are giving a lot of those short yardage carries to Josh Allen, which is great for fantasy. But as Josh Allen gets older, you don't want him absorbing those hits. So why not give it to your RB1 if you believe you have an RB1? So let's break down these red zone touches a little bit more. Last season, the Bills awarded Murray, Dame Harris, Ty Johnson, and even Leonard Fournette, for Christ's sake, 36 carries in the red zone. James Cook had 33. So combined, all of those complimentary backs had 3 more red zone carries. And then if we look at usage inside the 5, that group of running backs combined for 16 carries inside the 5-yard line. James Cook only had 5. There is a need for a power running back in this offense. The power running back spot in this offense is going to have standalone value in fantasy football drafts. So, like, Ray Davis isn't just a handcuff. This is a player that you can get. Now, his ADP might be a little bit more expensive than it was, but he's still relatively cheap for not only a handcuff, but, again, legitimate standalone value. Like, I believe he has, people were drafting Charbonnet last year thinking he was going to have standalone value. He did not. Like, I value Ray Davis a lot higher than Charbonnet did last year, a lot higher than people are looking at Benson this year. So, like, this is a player that I'm trying to walk out of a lot of fantasy drafts with, and I will continue doing so. Like, I just think that there is a world where Ray Davis could be a 8, 10, 12 touchdown scorer this season. And I think that's a hot take, but I think that is a feasible hot take, considering all of the red zone and goal line work that went to complimentary running backs. And again, like, Josh Allen, 15 rushing touchdowns. That's an outlier. He's usually in that 7 to 8 range. So, like, if Ray Davis continues on this path, he's going to, I don't know if it's a league winner, but, man, he's going to return some immense value at cost.
Even if Josh Allen gets, like, you mentioned like 7 or 8, even if Josh Allen gets 9 or 10, there's still touchdowns left there to be had. I mean, I'll be honest. This is the beauty of podcasting with Anthony, is when he first started talking about Ray Davis, I was like, I don't know, man. But the more and more I looked into it, the more and more he spoke about it, I started to buy into it. And again, the cost is absolutely undeniable. I mean, it's a lot like what Steve was saying too about the cost of these players. We're going to get into some players soon that are a little more high priced, but we still consider them sleepers.
I think he's going as like the RB50 right now when you have FPC, RB50.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
no, I'm with you. Did anybody else have anything to give Anthony on that Ray Davis pick or no?
Yeah, I like Ray Davis a lot. Been drafting him a lot. I like his talent. And Pete posted something, kid grew up in a crazy situation, foster homes and whatnot, really had a tough upbringing, but made it through all of that. And now is, a possible starter in the NFL. So great story, very good player. And I really like the situation he's in.
Pete's on mute because he's chewing food usually, but go ahead, buddy.
That was from Dane Brugler from The Athletic, who, if there's a couple of guys that during draft season that I listen to, it's Dane Brugler and it is Daniel Jeremiah. Those are the two guys I trust the most when it comes to evals. And Dane Brugler had Ray Davis as a top 10 running back in this draft. He said he'd make he's gonna be a guy that's not gonna take a lot of time to develop. He is older, he's 24, but like to Anthony's point, like last year James Cook had 29 attempts inside the 20-yard line. Latavius Murray had 20. Like Cook only had 45 of those, and then he only scored 1 touchdown inside the 5. There was even I'd have to look up the stat, but it's even inside the 5 is even worse for James Cook, and Murray is even closer when it comes to attempts. I just don't think that this team is as in love with him. And the only thing I would say, and then we'll move on, is Sean McDermott's an old school coach. James Cook is a mental errors kind of running back with the fumbling, with the dropping of the football. I remember in a game last year, James Cook fumbled. We didn't see him until the second half. Like Sean McDermott's that kind of coach. Very Bill Belichick in a way sometimes with his running backs, in my opinion, where it's like you mess up, like you're kind of in the doghouse. But unfortunately, they just haven't had anybody good enough to put ahead of James Cook. And James Cook, people say he was 4th in the league for yards last year. He faced like the 45th most loaded boxes, like out of all running backs. Like he wasn't tasked with like heavy boxes. So sure, like his
but
yards or
he's
contact.
still a good back, James Cook. I just think 4th round is like last year was 7th round. And now, like you said, you have a quality running back like Ray Davis, and that's one of the reasons I haven't been clicking on Cook that much this year.
Yeah, I don't even.
I like
think
his talent.
I think he's a decent
sure.
pass catcher. I don't. If I was naming the top 20 running backs in the league outside of fantasy football, he wouldn't even make that list for me. Sorry, I know.
I really thought about that, but yeah, I mean, he definitely killed them with some big drops last year.
Yeah, that's the thing I worry about.
And Ray Davis actually was pretty sure-handed as a receiver.
I want to say, people talk about the running back dead zone, and that could be in a different spot in drafts or for different analysts. My running back dead zone starts with Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara. That's my running back dead zone. Like I will take other positions, and listen. My bust for today's show, I last minute changer from Josh Jacobs.
Right.
I don't like any of these running backs, and even Rachaad White. Like my other pivot sleeper was Bucky Irving.
So a couple of quick things I'll just run through, and then we'll go on to Pete's guy. We did
Rachaad White, captain in inefficiency.
We did get who's a better sleeper, Blake Corum or Ray Davis. I think based on what we're telling you, I think we all like Ray Davis more. Or
I like Corum.
Somebody you like?
I like Corum more.
I like Davis more, but
I like Davis more, but Corum, if he gets that opportunity, he might not look back.
That's why I prefer Corum.
Yeah.
Corum has more upside, I think.
Yep. Yeah, you guys probably right, but yeah,
just because of that offense and the way McVay uses his running backs.
Sure,
I think Davis will produce for us earlier on, but I think Corum has the biggest potential, and at that point where you're drafting them, it's you don't. So
just for shits and giggles, have fun with Anthony's. Stefan's asking, what do you guys think about Dalvin Cook and the Cowboys? Anthony, quick answer.
I don't. Number one, he's not signed yet. He's on an airplane to Dallas.
He's getting signed. Oh, come on.
We know what's happening. He's getting signed. They're all in. Hamid says he has to pick one. Is it okay? Yes. Oh, he's picking one overall. Is it okay to take Brees over CMC? Yeah, it is. Even me being a Niner guy. Yeah, no, that's okay. It's okay. Yep. I don't hate that.
Absolutely.
All right. We got one other question, and then we will go to Pete on Pete's sleeper. We're getting asked 2 questions. James Cook or Alvin Kamara, and Debo or Nico Collins, assuming Brandon Ayuk stays in San Francisco. I think at this rate, Ayuk stays in San Francisco. I would say as the resident 49er guy, do I think he's there in the huddle in week 1? I'm starting to think no, which is obnoxious, but it also means if you're playing any kind of DFS, Captain George Kittle on Monday Night Football, because he's going to get targeted like crazy. I personally would go... Man, this sounds crazy, but I'd go Alvin Kamara, and I'm going Debo. I'm going Alvin Kamara and Debo on there. I get it, James Cook and Alvin Kamara. If we're now to be specific, if we're in a PPR league, then I definitely go Kamara. If we're in a half point or if we're in a standard, I'm going James Cook. But the PPR does kind of carry some weight when it comes to Alvin Kamara. I expect him to be targeted quite a bit. And the same thing I mentioned with George Kittle. I mean, if Ayuk is not there in week 1, or for as long as it takes him to get into game shape, that only bodes well for the Debo Samuels and the George Kittles of the world. It's not like Debo Samuel's a slouch next to Nico Collins. So I would go with those 2 guys. If you guys have any comments, then we'll go on to Pete's sleeper. You guys can feel free to comment.
I'd flip him.
Dennis,
I'm not going to give him
Dennis Allen loves Kamara, so he'll probably tell Derek Carr to dump it off to him 9,000 times again, and then Dennis Allen will probably be fired next year, and then probably one more good year for Kamara. So yeah, he's probably a little bit safer. They were like the same amount of points last year, I think, Cook and Kamara.
They were close.
I kind of like Cook's upside more. Kamara's older now, could wear it down. But I mean, Kendrick Miller can't get on the field. Dennis freaking Allen hates his guts. And then you got Jamal Williams. So it's going to be the freaking Alvin Kamara show again. But their offensive line is in a lot of trouble this year. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to project for Kamara.
All right, so let's get on to Pete. Pete, you've got one of our last two sleepers. You will go, then I will go. Who's your sleeper this year?
Yeah, so for me, it's Calvin Ridley. I've always been a Calvin Ridley fan. It's crazy the fall off. I know, obviously, with the suspension, and then prior to that, he had the mental health stuff where he kind of played a couple of games and then left. Like, this was a guy that the community was super high on. Like, dynasty wise, he was like a top 10 dynasty value at wide receiver at the time. But I'm buying in on Ridley. There's some coach speak, right, where it seems like they're looking to use him more in a Jamar Chase role, where they're going to move him around, which unfortunately with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, that was the biggest issue that I had with them, is that they just weren't creative enough. It was a very stagnant offense. Now, to their credit, Ridley did get the opportunities, and he didn't finish on some of those opportunities. He was the wide receiver 17 last year. So I don't really know why people are so down or people don't like Ridley. It seems to get a lot of hate for a guy who didn't play in a year and a half and still finished as the wide receiver 17. If anything, I just think people's expectations were too high. But for me, he more than met his expectations for a guy that didn't play for a year and a half and went to a completely different team, learned a whole new system. So he's being drafted as wide receiver 32. Came off a year where he was wide receiver 17. Now he is learning a new system, but this is a guy who still has elite route running ability. He was still one of the better route runners last year. Per player profiler, he won the 16th most routes in the NFL last year. He received 136 targets and eclipsed 1,000 yards his first year back after being gone for a year and a half. This guy is talented. He was able to get into the end zone 8 times last year. So and that's with the drops that he had, where everyone's seen the compilation video of Lawrence throwing to Ridley, where he just dropped a bunch of passes in the end zone, red zone. So I think he comes down with more of those, and I think this is just a better offense, and I think they're going to feature him more with better quality of targets, and I'm excited for him. And I also think DeAndre Hopkins is going to open up easier matchups for him. I think when Christian Kirk went down, they tried to put him in that Christian Kirk role, and it just wasn't a fit for him, to be completely honest with you. But my bold take is I do think Ridley cracks into the top 20, which he's being drafted as wide receiver 32. So that's definitely good value there. But I also think this is a top 15 offense, possibly getting close to the top 10. That's the kind of upside that I see in this offense with Brian Callahan, and I'm very excited to see how they look this year.
Yeah, that's some bold takes, but I'm willing to ride those bold takes with Tennessee and this offense. Now, I do want to interject here. You brought up how people had expectations for Calvin Ridley. I was one of those people. I when he went to Jacksonville, I was running around with a fantasy football erection. And just totally ignored all of the time missed. And I overdrafted Calvin Ridley, thinking, "Oh, this guy's a top 12 receiver. I'm going to win leagues with this guy." But yeah, you're right. His finish wasn't that bad if you didn't overdraft him like I did and like other people did. And I think that's why people are so soured on Calvin Ridley. Sure. He had 5 top 12 finishes, 9 finishes as the wide receiver 37 or worse. So a very frustrating player. But the positive is I do like the system better. I like what Callahan's going to bring here. Brian Callahan, this is a team, people, you kind of have to put blinders on to what we're used to out of Tennessee. No more Vrabel, no more Derrick Henry. This is a team that is telling us by bringing in a pass catching back like Pollard. You're paying Calvin Ridley a lucrative contract, addressing the offensive line, the top 10 of NFL drafts in back-to-back years. We want to throw the football. We want to distance ourselves from that era. And I have the stat in front of me. Callahan, they throw the football. I just want to say this right. So 4 of 5 of Brian Callahan's seasons in Cincinnati, his offense ranked top 12 in pass rate and finished in the top 6 2 times in that category. They have the personnel to throw the hell out of the football. And mind you, Hopkins, he's getting older. He's already dealing with an injury. Who knows if Hopkins misses time this season? And I think the biggest benefactor will be Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, Ant, like second, third round, he was moving up to last year. So now he's going in the 5th round. And that's, it's a discount a little bit. And the Hopkins injury, and he could certainly be fed by Levis. We'll see how that looks. I haven't been clicking on Ridley that much. I think he's kind of like on the downward spiral of his career, but maybe they just really toss the shit out of the ball. And, if Hopkins is going to miss a lot of time, he's just going to be forced targets. So it could be nice.
All right. So we're going to, I do want to get one quick question before I go with my last sleeper. And Pete, you brought it up. And Pete, I was going to kick it to you since you are the Denver Broncos guy. So go ahead, go with it, man.
Yeah. So Brian Robinson or Javonte, it's tough. I don't want to be a homer and say Javonte. I think my stomach says Javonte, my stomach says Brian Robinson, but I lean Javonte just because we've seen Sean Payton be successful as a play caller in the NFL. Unfortunately, for what it's worth, like Cliff has been good for fantasy for some players, but in my opinion, I think Cliff has shown that he is not a good offensive coordinator since he got to the NFL. It's just my opinion. So when it comes to the running back position, this group was targeted 130 times last year. So we know the volume will be there. And I think Javonte, probably, I think he catches the most passes in his offense, with Jaleel and P. Ryan is now gone. And you have Estime, and I love Brian Robinson. He's actually cheaper. So I don't mind getting him either. But he has Austin Eckler there who could outcatch him, for what it's worth in that offense. We know Sean Payton, I think it was a crazy stat, like 9 out of the last 10 years Sean Payton was a coach, this offense for running backs has been in the top 10 for receptions and in the top 5, 5 or 6 times. So this is the and Bo Nix, people want to give him shit for being a check down guy. That only helps Javonte Williams if that's the case. And this is an offense that doesn't have a lot of weapons in the pass game. Jaden Daniels may run the ball more than we expect and may not check it down. So as a B-Rob lover, maybe I've convinced myself to go Javonte. I just don't want to sound like the homer here on the show.
I mean, I would go Javonte, so I'm not even. So I wasn't even going to crush on that. I would go
Nobody's a bigger homer than Hall. So
that's right. Damn straight. Take good pride in that. Also, just really quick before I get into my sleeper, Hamid X, Ridley over Hopkins over Burks. Yes, over both. And Burks, I cannot emphasize how much I don't give a shit about Burks in fantasy football, NFL, life in general. I don't care. So
Tyler Boyd is the guy over Burks.
Tyler Boyd would
played with Callahan in Cincinnati. That's all. I don't want Tyler Boyd, but I'm just saying.
But even still, I'd still take Ridley. If
of course.
All right, we're gonna get into my last sleeper. Now listen,
and that's Christian McCaffrey.
No, it's not Christian McCaffrey. You and your Giants helmet back there. Why don't you polish up your Giants helmet? You sorry son of a bitch. All right, where is it? You know where the fuck it is. You love it. You probably pray to it at night. Anyway, hijinks aside, my sleeper is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. Now listen. This is a sleeper for the folks who are just coming out and getting ready to draft. If you've been in the weeds, if you've been there with the 4 of us drafting best ball drafts left and right, you know who Brian Thomas is. He was drafted 23rd overall by the Jacksonville Jaguars, but right now he's going off the board as the 45th wide receiver. But here's the thing. Then this is why I preface this by saying some of you might not know. If you go to best ball drafts on Underdog, Brian Thomas right now is going around the late 6th round. If you go to other areas like Sleeper, even ESPN has him going as 11th round, late 10th round pick. So some of you might not be ahead of the curve on Brian Thomas. I'm telling you that you need to be. We're going to have 22 vacated targets, 22% of the vacated targets from the Jacksonville Jaguars, that being Calvin Ridley, who is now off to Tennessee, who Pete just spoke about. I like him a lot. This depth chart is not impenetrable. Right now we have Christian Kirk there. Christian Kirk's dealing with some injuries. We think he'll be okay. Then there's Gabe Davis, who I know Gabe Davis has been definitely a DFS darling, somebody who we've always wanted to succeed out in Buffalo. I know Anthony would beat the Gabe Davis drum. I wouldn't be far behind him either. So I'm not even attacking him on that. But just him in Jacksonville trying to hold off Brian Thomas, I don't see that being a real problem. I think Brian Thomas is going to be somebody who's going to do well in this offense. I think when you look at the wide receivers that have gone in front of you, and again, I speak to you people who are just getting ready to draft now, who haven't done all the homework, who haven't been here since the season ended, since the confetti fell in the Super Bowl. We've all been here. That's why we're here for you. I mean, Brian Thomas is going to succeed in this offense. He's caught 3 of 4 targets for 93 yards in the preseason. You see the names like Marvin Harrison Jr. You see Malik Neighbors. You get hot and bothered. Those guys are very exciting, and they should be. I'm starting to sour on Marvin Harris's ADP. I'm more in line with the Malik Neighbors going a little bit later. Yes, Pete, I did say that. I am getting a little worried that the ADP is getting a little too high.
Over there.
Even though, watch myself. You watch yourself. But right now, you got Brian Thomas Jr. going around guys like if we're talking about rookies, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman. I would rather have Thomas over both of those guys. And Anthony, I don't know if you're going to disagree with that because you're a Ladd McConkey guy, but I'd rather have Brian Thomas over both those guys. The only thing I would say, just as a disclaimer, I think he's going to have a good week 1. We're going to come at you with some DFS content. I like him in week 1. They're going to play the Dolphins. It's one of the highest scoring games in the week. I think he's going to produce there. Week 2 is going to be a problem. He's going to play the Browns. That's going to be an issue. We'll see what the Bills secondary looks like. That comes up in week 3. But beyond that, I think between the 22% of vacated targets from Calvin Ridley, I think from whatever injury Christian Kirk is dealing with, if he's at 100% to start the year, and competition at the depth chart, I like Brian Thomas Jr. And again, if you're drafting in a redraft, you're getting him later than you're getting him in best ball. So if any of you best ball drafters are saying this is stupid, you should look at what the ESPN ADP is, because it's almost double. So I'm going Brian Thomas Jr. I like this pick, and I'm very happy with it. Any thoughts from the masses?
Yeah. You bring up who the other rookies you'll draft him over. I'm warming up on Brian Thomas. I still like Ladd McConkey more, but I will take Brian Thomas over Keon Coleman. That's where I kind of draw that line.
Sure.
If I'm drafting a rookie receiver inside of that, those few rounds, it's Ladd McConkey or Brian Thomas. My take on McConkey is I think he's going to lead that team in targets, where you have a little bit more target competition in Jacksonville, but in the same breath, I think the overall ceiling for Brian Thomas is higher than Ladd McConkey.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Brian Thomas a lot too. I think there's a chance he could be the best receiver in this draft. And I like him over Odunze too, because his path is better. I mean, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And then Brian Thomas led college football in touchdowns. He's just a guy that could take the top off the defense. I've been splitting it up with him and Ladd about 50-50. I like Ladd's situation a lot too. So, but yeah, Brian Thomas, just so much potential there in Jacksonville. I do think he's going to help that offense and help Trevor Lawrence this year.
So, and I asked this because I posted this poll today. Would you guys take Brian Thomas over Christian Watson? Because they're back to pretty close to back to back.
It depends what I'm doing with my teams. If I had one draft, I'd probably go with Brian Thomas. But it's very close. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing so many teams with Jordan Love and Christian Watson. I kind of like that combo better with the quarterback and Christian Watson. But in a home league, you don't really need to stack as much as when you're playing in a tournament. But I think Thomas could easily be a better probably a better prospect than Watson overall. Considering his pedigree, playing in the SEC Watson came out of what freaking Division II, was it? Or like, he was like he didn't play for a big time.
I think he went the same place that no, it's
Trey
not the same
Lance?
place. Yeah,
Trey
that's
Lance,
what I
right?
thought. And
Yeah.
Carson Wentz as well.
Right. North Dakota, or South
State.
Dakota.
Yeah. For what it's worth, this poll got 299 votes, and Brian Thomas was 75% of the votes.
Wow.
Christian Watson was 25. I think that's a case of just like people buying into a little bit of the hype over the weekend.
Yeah, the preseason changes.
Yeah.
People see like one catch from a guy or like anything, and all of a sudden he's just gonna fucking run rampant through the league. It just changes everything so crazy.
It's a tough call.
All of a sudden, like Ingram caught 2 touchdowns yesterday. He's going like the third, fourth round. Like people just get giddy, man.
They do. I do think it's close. I think I still lean Christian Watson just because I think he has the highest upside. It's nothing against Brian Thomas. I love Brian Thomas this year. We talked about it a lot, Steve, but I just think Christian Watson has the highest ceiling just for this specific year. Next year, probably a completely different story. Brian Thomas is now year 2, and he's more developed at that point, and we're probably having a different discussion at that point.
I will say, if I'm in a best ball, I would go Christian Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, then I would go Brian Thomas. So again, that's why I presented Brian Thomas here, because to me, it's more for the redraft guys, the guys and the gals that are coming out here to try and get the information that they need before their drafts, which is coming up this weekend, or before toe meets ball the week after, which is very exciting stuff. So yeah, that's how I would roll.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, were you going to say something else, or
no? I'm good.
No, you were just going to say that I'm so smart.
All right, we have 2 questions. One's Brian Thomas. I'll answer that first. Jonathan Santiago says Brian Thomas or Worthy. I still preferred Brian Thomas for me.
Same.
Yeah, Worthy's more expensive. He's like a round or 2.
Yeah.
He goes in the 5th round sometimes, but he's tied to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So, again, I think Worthy can be really good. He's like a Tank Dell. He's not just a speedster. He's not just a 4-2 guy. He can actually run routes. So,
receivers they're sometimes the pick to hit, though. Like consistently, I should say.
Yeah, it's just a question of how quickly can he get adapted to Andy Reid's system. We saw Rashee Rice take a little bit last year, but you got Hollywood Brown, who's been out, and Worthy's getting all the snaps and all the looks, and they took him where they took him, pretty high in the 1st round there. So that's a close one. I think maybe this year I prefer Worthy just because he's tied to Mahomes, but that's a tough one. I like both these guys a lot.
I think Thomas for me, just because it's not neighbors, and it's not Marv, and I think I'd prefer to just take the guy at the cheaper cost, because I don't know I know the potential for Worthy's there. I just don't know. I just still really don't know what to expect. I really think Brian Thomas is going to be like a huge part of the game plan, like every game. I not to say Worthy won't be, but there's other guys in that offense that are alphas that we can expect to be game planned for, in my opinion. But it's again, they're close. That's why I prefer the cheaper guy.
So anything else today, or is that pretty much it?
A few more. Ahmad says Jonathan Brooks is a sleeper. Hubbard and Sanders won't be that effective. I'll let one of you guys answer that.
I think Hubbard's gonna be more effective than people think. Just Brooks is starting the year. He's not going to play right away. Once he gets in there, is he acclimated? So on and so forth. So I like Hubbard. I do. Where you get him.
I'm also in on Hubbard, and all offseason I was in on Brooks. He was my number 1 rookie running back. Right. And then we find out, okay, well, he's going to open a year. We're not going to see him until week 3 or week 4. All of this time missed for a rookie running back or a rookie wide receiver, that puts up some red flags. And, and some of the reasons why I like Jonathan Brooks was because of the interior offensive line upgrades that Carolina had made. And we also know that Callahan, look at all the touches Rachaad White got. I don't know if Chuba Hubbard's going to go away even when Brooks comes back. I think, because of this time missed, and if Chuba improves on his efficiency, because his efficiency was in a tank last year, if he just upgrades a little bit with this revamped offensive line and system, then I don't know if he's going away. And at cost, I would rather draft Hubbard.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead. You got it. no, you're eating. You're chewing. A&J Films, as Pete puts up a question that puts food in his mouth, he asks, yo, family, what up, man? I'm in an 8-man league. First things first, tell your guys to get 10 or 12-man league.
12.
I'm in an 8-man league at 12. I'm in an 8-man league, and I know my teammates are all going wide receiver first round, and I'm the 8th pick. Should I draft Breece Hall and Bijan? Yeah, we kind of had a question like this at the top of the show. Not an 8-man league question per se, but yeah, I think we're all on board. Whether you want to pick Breece or whether you want to pick Bijan, I think either back you take there will be just fine. Again, I don't know if you're PPR, standard, half point. You might be standard based on the fact they have an 8-man league. Who knows? So yeah, but definitely go one of those two guys.
I take both.
Sure. Right.
In an 8-man, like the drop off again, we talk about elite talent. Like, drop off at running back. There's so many wide receivers this year. In an 8-man, like, there's so much potential at wide receivers on the way back. You'll be fine. I'd take them both. All right. So one more. Well, two more from Steven. This one will be quick. Juju to the Chiefs.
No.
Any fantasy value?
No. My daughter's nickname is Juju, and I
would a soft spot. And
I'll put it to you this way, Steve. I would have more stock in my mother if she was playing wide receiver for the Chiefs than I would Juju Smith-Schuster. How's that sound?
I mean, do you think that's indicative of possible Rice suspension? The signing of Juju?
You want to know what's indicative of? That Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney suck at football.
Yeah, that's probably it makes more sense, right?
All right, we have a couple more coming in, so let's just rip through these.
Sorry, Sky Moore truthers.
Anthony's my favorite.
Brandon Kim, 12-man. Please rate my squad: Josh Allen, Kyron, Aaron Jones, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Evan Ingram, Jalen Warren, Gus Edwards. I mean, I think it's pretty good. I mean, you got an elite talent and two guys probably finish top 5 in Jamar and Josh Allen, possibly top 3 for both as well. And I don't mind taking a chance on Kyron. So I like it.
I agree with you on a lot of that. I'm just going to say just for news purposes, Jalen Warren did come out today and say that he thinks he'll be ready to go for week 1. He's pretty confident. There's a big difference between what a player says and what the coach eventually says. So keep that in mind, but there is some confidence there.
Yeah. Gibbs was also back at practice today too.
I did see that. All right. One of you guys needs an RB2 from Richard.
Ram.
Standard league, Ramondre, Swift, or Pollard.
Someone wants dinner.
Yeah,
I'm going Pollard.
I like Ram too. I think he's the best back of the bunch, but Pollard could be in a pretty nice situation now with that offensive line improving, catching a lot of passes. But I still think Ram.
It's standard. Yeah, and I think of who's going to pass the potential lead of those backs and touchdowns. Probably Ramondre Stevenson.
I still, even if it's standard, I still go Pollard by a smidgen. But if I'm wrong, I will not be shocked. It would go Pollard, Ramondre, Swift, and the difference between Pollard and Ramondre is much closer than that of Swift. And
Jamie hates Kyron's guts, man. He just cannot.
He's on a tear.
He's been crushing Kyron all show.
Brandon, yes. Answer, Brandon. Say one more, then we got to jump. Ronald says, "Who do you guys think truly will be the wide receiver 1 for the Texans?" Nico. I think we're all in consensus with Nico. Brandon, if you get your question in the next 30 seconds, we will answer it. If not, we will. You'll just have to come back on Wednesday.
You can ask it when we're off air. We'll answer it. We're
doing that because. Yeah, I was going to say, because we referenced this earlier. We talked about it on the last show. Guys, ask your questions when you're here in the live chat. But if you notice that you're watching a video that's not live, and, Ronald, I see you did ask the question, so we'll get to it, I promise, before we get off the air. If you ask the question while we're not live, if it's on any kind of video, we all see it. We will answer. Yeah. One of us will answer it, and we'll either answer from the face-off account, from our personal accounts. We will 1,000% get back to you. So please hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We want to help you guys win. So there you go.
Yeah, if we're answering your questions, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Do us a solid. We're helping you out. Return the favor.
Yeah, and And Ronald says, big on Ridley. Ronald, we had a whole segment about 20 minutes back, so you can actually just rewind. But Ridley was actually my sleeper pick. Brandon asked us one more question, and the only thing I wanted to say, and then we'll answer Brandon, and we'll get out of here. Anthony kind of talked about it. You know, we don't want these videos to go an hour 40, and we talk about like. Once the season gets here, especially Sundays, like we're going to get a lot of questions. It's going to be hard to answer everybody and get to everything. So, you know, if you want it as a priority to be answered in time, just if you feel so inclined, send us a super chat. It's, you know, send us a couple bucks on YouTube. It really helps us out, and we'll make it a priority to make sure we answer it. We don't know what this chat room.
We will answer.
We'll answer. Yeah, we just don't know what. We don't know what these videos are going to look like when the season starts because we expect to get a lot. I mean, last video we had 100 comments in the live chat. So Brandon wanted his other team rated. He said he's got Hurts, Pacheco, Rashad, JJ, Zay Flowers, Pitts, Deonta, Adunze, and Zeke. Steve?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Pretty good. I would maybe like a B-.
Yeah, I mean, the only input I was going to have was I just think that Deonta, for where he's being drafted and for the target share that he's going to have, I know it's a big question mark based on what we saw from Bryce Young in year one, but with Dave Canales there, hopefully to improve the offense, I'm thinking that Deontay Johnson might be a nice play for as late as he's going with the target share that he might get. So
yeah, he should get that Thielen role that Thielen did last year. Just get force fed. I mean, Thielen's 34 years old now.
He's a great wide receiver.
He fell off but he fell off the end of last year.
Well,
Leggett really hasn't shown anything yet. He's been a first round pick. He dropped the pass in preseason. I like Leggett, and there's really nobody else there. Mingo's didn't do anything last year. Marshall, so yeah, Deontay Johnson and Bryce looked good the other day too.
The only reason I won't get into my Thielen love is because we're at an hour and 41 minutes. If it was 41 minutes, I would interject and say something stupid.
To close out, I like your. I think you're right. I like your other roster better. I think I like the first team better.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. No, I'd agree. The first one. Yeah.
Boom.
All right.
Roasted.
Yeah. Perfect. I don't know. It's good you put that in there. All right. So listen, that's gonna do it for today's show. Again, I will say that's have a good time. We appreciate you all joining us again as we go off air. If you feel the need to ask a question, definitely ask it. We will get to it 1000% guaranteed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, be notified every single time we go live. Until next time, stay thirsty, be kind to one another. We'll catch you on the flip side. Cheers.